All right, so here's number 8, which is similar to number 7. If you saw that video, factoring by grouping, we're going to do a similar thing here, or pretty much the same thing, just different numbers and such. So we're going to group these together, right? And then we're going to group these together. Okay, and remember, we're just, even though I'm putting parentheses next to each other, that's just, I'm kind of just thinking of them together, not necessarily really, I'm not trying to multiply here, right, with these two parentheses next to each other. So still just adding there, or subtracting depending on the sign. So, but I'm grouping them together to kind of factor out common factors. Okay, so common factor here between the 6x cubed and the 5x squared y to the second, they both have 2 x's in common, right? This has 3 x's, but what they have in common is only 2 x's, right? Because this one only has 2, so you can't have more than 2. So x squared is a common factor, and so we're going to put x squared out front here. Okay. All right. And so now I'm gonna, in my head, divide each of these by x squared, right? So I can figure out what goes back inside the parentheses. So if I divide, let me take that out here. So if I divide 6x cubed divided by x squared, then x cubed divided by x squared is just x, right? And then 6 just stays the same because there's no numbers that we're dividing by. So it'd be 6x, right? And just to double check, if you multiplied x squared times 6x, you would get 6x cubed, right? So that works. And then now I'm going to divide 5x squared y divided by x squared, right? And that'll just cancel out the x squareds. So what we'll have is minus 5y. Okay. Now you can see that that's exactly what we have here. We already knew that was the case because they're all the same, so that didn't really help us to differentiate, but that's how it's done. Okay. So now for the second set, I'm going to try to find the greatest common factor between negative 24xy squared and 20y cubed. Okay. Now, right off the bat, when you see a negative here in your first term, that's going to come out. Okay. So I'm going to put a minus right here. And that's an important thing. And that basically narrows it down to C or D, right? So that's one thing that helps us to narrow it down a little bit. All right, so now the greatest common factor between 24xy squared and 20y cubed is, first of all, I'm looking at the numbers. 24 and 20 have a common factor of 4, right? 4 goes into both of them. It's the biggest number that goes into both of them. So I'm going to put a 4 out here. And then there's an x here, but no x over here. And then there's a y squared and a y cubed. So just like with the x's in the previous set, we can't have more y's than y squared with the 24xy squared. So y squared is our greatest common factor as far as the variables go. Alright, so now I'm going to put my leftovers back inside. Just like you put your leftovers inside the fridge when you're done. So I'm dividing each of these things by 4y squared. So 24xy squared divided by 4y squared is going to be 6x. Right? 24 divided by 4 is 6. X comes down because we're not dividing by x. Y squared divided by y squared cancels out. Alright, then I'm going to divide 20y cubed divided by 4y squared. Alright, and so 20 divided by 4 is 5. Y cubed divided by y squared is y. And one thing to remember here is that we have a negative 4 that we're actually dividing by. So 20 divided by negative 4 would be negative 5. Alright, so that's the first step in factoring by grouping, is to factor out a common factor between each pair of terms. And just like we talked about in number 7, if you do it correctly, you'll notice that this and this are the same, right? And so now that's a common factor from each of this term and this term, and so we can factor that out and bring that to the front, right? So I'm going to come down here, so I'm going to put 6x minus 5y in the front, and then I'm going to put x squared minus 4y in the second set of parentheses. 4y squared, sorry. Okay. Alright, so that's factoring by grouping. But we're not, well, yeah, we're done with this part of it. We actually, I'm kind of moving ahead to part B. So on part A, we kind of already figured it out, right? I'm kind of got ahead of myself there for a second. But on part A, we just need this part here, right? Like that's the part that's the key, because that's what's different. And then when we look at our answers, we have C and we have D, right? Because we know this is going to be a negative here. And so between C and D, we can see that D is the one that matches up with what we have, right? And another way to do this without doing the factoring by grouping is just to distribute all these, right? And you wouldn't do anything with these ones right here, because those are all the same. So what you would do is you would just, distribute this and see if that comes out the same as, this stuff up here, and then you distribute this and see, so you just try all these and see which one comes out. But anyway, the reason why factoring by grouping is nice is because it'll help us out for part B. Okay. All right, so we got D, and I'm looking at my answer key right here, and that's correct. So for part B, I'm going to start out by writing out what we had. Hopefully I'll remember it correctly. So we had x squared times 6x minus 5y minus 4y squared times 6x minus 5y. Alright. Okay, and then like I said, we did this on this last step as well, but this is the answer for part D, right? I mean, for part A was answer D, and this was it. But now we have a common factor here, and we're going to bring that to the front. So we're going to write 6x minus 5y in the front, and then our leftovers are x squared minus 4y. So I'm going to put that in parentheses right here. Okay. And by the way, this question is asking what are the factors of this whole term, and it's the same polynomial that we had on the previous question. So we know that 6x minus 5y is a factor, so B is going to be an answer. Okay, but notice that we don't see this one anywhere, right? We have x squared plus 4y squared, but that's not the same as x squared minus 4y squared. So that's kind of one just that they put there just to trick you. Okay, but this is something that we can factor a different way, not factoring by grouping, but difference of two squares factoring. Okay, so I have more factoring to do. And these are the kind of things they love doing on the PARCC, is just combining skills and extending problems like that. So, all right, so this is the difference of two squares. I have a perfect square here, and I'm subtracting them. So those are the characteristics of a difference of two squares. So what you do is you take the first term, take the square root of it. The square root of x squared is just x. And so whatever you get, you put that answer here, here, and here. Okay. All right. Then we're going to do the same thing with this one. The square root of 4y squared is 2y, right? Square root of 4 is 2, and the square root of y squared is y. And then you put that in both spots in the back. Okay. All right. And then the last thing you do is you just put a plus in between one set and a minus in between the other. And that's how you factor difference of two squares. So technically, if we wanted to put the whole thing all together, this whole thing here equals this whole thing here. Okay. All right, and these are all the three factors. And we can see x plus 2y is there and x minus 2y is there. So we can see all of our answers there. Okay, so it's B, C, and E. This is a select all that applies, so we can select multiple answers. And notice that the ones that they gave you that are false are opposite signs, right? So they're definitely there to trick you, right? It's the opposite sign of this, and it's the opposite sign of this. So if you have a sign error, then it's easy to select A or D. So watch out for those mistakes there. Easy to make. All right, so that's number 8, part A and B. I think there's other ways of doing it, but I think with number 7, factoring by grouping is a good skill to kind of remember. There's a couple questions that they put on here that are like it, so it's a good possibility you might see something like that on the actual part. All right, keep working hard. Let me know if you have any questions on this, or if you need any clarification or further explanation, or if you want me to show you a different way. Edmo to me.